2021, they sold a majority interest of the company to the giant Mondelez for 200 million. Let's just let that sink in. And how did you kind of come up with the concept? You said you were always interested in sports nutrition. What was kind of the first product that you brought to market then?
So when we launched Grenade, we wanted to be the Red Bull of sports nutrition. So we wanted to have one product that stood out and everyone knew what it would be called by the look and feel of the packaging. So, we only wanted to be a sports nutrition brand. So, when everyone says, oh, how was Grenade so successful? And again, success is a strange definition. For us, it was all about timing. So we never even thought about a protein bar when we launched Grenade back in 2010 because protein bars weren't really a thing. And I think that, we got listed in retailers in the sports nutrition aisle, so like Tesco's. I remember getting an email from them saying we can't ignore you anymore, and that put us in a really good position. So they obviously wanted to be part of it, but they didn't really know where they were going to put us. So I never forget somebody sending me a picture. They said, oh look, Grenade really made it, and there we were next to a tub of KY jelly, and it was just a bit like, yeah, probably not the best place for us.
Before we get into today's episode, I want to give a shout out to a special sponsor, Sam Lawrence Recruitment. We all know that finding the right people or the right job can feel really overwhelming, and that's exactly where Sam comes in. He really just gets it. It's not just about ticking boxes, it's about connecting the right people with the right opportunities. He takes the time to understand you and exactly what you're looking for, whether you're building a team or taking that next career leap. So definitely get in touch. Trust me, you'll be glad you did. At Getting to Grow, I believe that growth starts with connection. And that's where our sponsor, We Are All Marketing, comes in. I'm super excited to be partnering with Vic and the team over at We Are All Marketing. They're not just a marketing agency, they're storytellers, strategists, and your biggest advocates. Whether you're building a brand, launching a product, or strengthening your digital presence, We Are All Marketing helps you turn ideas into impact. With a personalised, results-driven approach, they ensure your vision reaches the right audience in the right way. Ready to grow your business? Visit weareallmarketing.com and see how they can help you thrive. Getting to Grow is also brought to you by the Coconut Collab. And full disclosure, as I'm sure most of you are aware, I work there, so I know how much love goes into everything that we make. We're all about creating delicious, dairy-free, plant-based treats that do not compromise on taste. From our creamy yogurts to our indulgent desserts, everything's made with coconuts and a whole lot of care. If you're looking for something naturally good but seriously tasty, and my favourite is just our natural coconut yogurt, I have it most mornings with granola and lots of honey. Trust me, you're going to absolutely love it.
Hello everybody, and thank you so much for spending your Tuesday evening with me here this evening. I am Zoe Fox. To give you a little bit of context behind who I am and why I'm here tonight, I started a podcast back in lockdown when everyone had lots of time on their hands, and I have always been fascinated by entrepreneurial spirit, FMCG, but that's actually not how I started my career. I actually started my kind of working life in fashion, and it was there that I found my massive love for food. The girls that I worked with were quite obsessive about what they ate, as you can imagine in the fashion industry, and they introduced me to a place called Whole Foods. I'd never been into Whole Foods before, and I remember walking in and thinking, oh my goodness, this is nothing like I've experienced before. It's fascinating. And it was off the back of that I kind of handed in my resignation and thought food is where I want to be. And ever since then I joined, and my day job is head of business development at the Coconut Collaborative, which you guys might have heard of. It's the best-selling plant-based dairy-free yogurt and dessert brand in the UK. And off the back of that, thought there's a niche. No one's really speaking about amazing entrepreneurs in FMCG and why they started their business and how, and the ups and downs, what went wrong, what went right. But actually, it's not about me this evening. It's about the amazing Juliet Barrat, who is the co-founder of Grenade, which I'm sure you guys are very familiar with. So please give a warm welcome to Juliet. So Juliet founded Grenade back in 2010 alongside her partner Alan, which is like you've had such an amazing journey. I can't wait to get into it. With the aim of being the number one sports nutrition brand. It's now available in over 80 countries and they have the award-winning range, and especially, which I'm sure you guys are the most familiar with, the best-selling Grenade protein bars, the Carb Killers, which was labelled the 4th best-selling protein bar and chocolate bar in the UK, which is phenomenal, taking on the giants that are out there. In 2021, they sold a majority interest of the company to the giant Mondelez for 200 million. Let's just let that settle in. I know, so I'm so excited to get straight into it. So, welcome, Juliet.
Thank you for having me.
So, am I right in saying that you started Grenade with £27 in your bank account?
Well, not quite. I mean, we had a sports distribution business before, so selling other people's products to gyms and health clubs. And we realised pretty early on that we couldn't do it better, but we could definitely do it differently from everyone else. So I think if you start a brand by saying you can do better, it makes you sound like a bit of a, arse, I was going to say, but I've got to watch my language, so slightly arrogant. But we knew we could do it differently. So we sold our distribution business to a friend who ran that. And then we started Grenade. So we put all the funds from the distribution business into Grenade. But there were a few sort of times when we were down to 27 quid in the bank account, those sort of squeaky bum times that, are the ones that really sort of say, do you carry on or do you sort of knock it on the head? But for us, it was always that we were going to carry on.
And how did you kind of come up with the concept? You said you were always interested in sports nutrition. What was kind of the first product that you brought to market then?
So when we launched Grenade, we wanted to be the Red Bull of sports nutrition. So we wanted to have one product that stood out and everyone knew what it would be called by the look and feel of the packaging. So at that particular time, so sort of, maybe 2008, 2009, everything in sports nutrition was very generic. So it was all sold in white tubs. The names were very scientific. So Zedracut, Xenogen, Hydroxycut. No one could remember what they were called when you stepped outside of the gym or the health club where you bought them for. So we had a lot of friends that were in the military. And if I'm honest with you, Al was a bit obsessed. So every time we used to go to America on holiday, he used to watch a military channel. And I'm talking like he was obsessed. So like he wouldn't go out. He would literally just watch a military channel for like 12 hours a day. And we had a lot of friends that were in the military, and the back of our garage at home looked like Al used to do paintball, so it looked like some sort of arms dealer. So there were like sort of like paintball grenades and like guns and all sorts. It was just ridiculous. And he used to go and play paintball and like sort of soup up his gun, even though he was playing against like 12-year-old kids. And then we had a lot of friends that were in the military, and like we used to use them all as guinea pigs. So this was a caffeine-based product, so we used to give them loads of different variations to try. And one of our friends tried one of these capsules, and he said, "Oh my God, that was like a grenade going off." And that was, along with the fact that Al had smoke grenades in the back of the garage, that was it. We thought, it doesn't matter where you are in the world, what language you speak, you would know what that product was called by the look and feel of the container.
I can imagine that probably came up against some challenges, because I'm thinking Grenade obviously has lots of connotations around being not very good for things and people. So did you come up against any challenges with that being your name?
I mean, I think we always took ourselves really seriously as a brand, but we were never like, we tried to be quite sensitive. So you know that there were brands at that particular time, like one fashion brand where it was like a FUCK or whatever variation of that. And, we never wanted to be that in your face, really. So we had a couple of comments like, oh, it looks a bit gimmicky, you're selling something in a grenade container. But, all of our marketing was very sort of tongue-in-cheek, but it was never offensive. And I think that when you start a brand, you want to shock, but you don't want to offend. So we balanced that very, very carefully. And, the only real sort of pushback that we got was that people thought it was a gimmick because it was in a plastic toy-shaped, grenade-shaped container. So we had to work really, really hard to prove ourselves as a credible sports nutrition brand and to show that not only was the packaging, out there, but also the product worked, because we'd never have got away with selling a shit product in a grenade-shaped container because people would have bought it once and then they would never have bought it again. And that was never what we set out to do.
I think it's so important with food brands and drink brands. You have to taste phenomenal. That is how you get your repeat purchase, and that's how you get people coming back and buying you again. So yeah, you're so right. You have to have a phenomenal product.
Yeah, but also, this was a caffeine-based product, so you would feel it working. But, when you have a food brand, you have to have a relationship with your customer because they have to trust you because they're ingesting your product. So we were always like crystal clear on all the labeling. We only used high-grade caffeine. We never cut corners on anything. So for us, it was always about products that we would use ourselves. It was never about making money and trying to mislead the consumer. And, that sort of genuine, we wanted to produce good products that would actually work. That stayed with the brand all the way through to the present day, and that was so important to us.
So how many years were you trading before the kind of well-known protein bar came out that honestly I cannot tell you how many I've consumed?
Oh, well, thank you for your support. Like I said, you probably contributed towards something, so I appreciate that. I mean, when people sort of say, how long have you been like, sort of how long has your brand been going? For me, it's always like, it's not actually the amount of time that you've been running your brand. It's about the 10, 15 years before that actually gets you in that position to start the brand. So, you know, we had a sports nutrition background, so we were selling other people's products and stuff. And, you know, we only wanted to be a sports nutrition brand. So, you know, when everyone says, oh, how was Grenade so successful? And again, success is a strange definition. For us, it was all about timing. So we never even thought about a protein bar when we launched Grenade back in 2010, because protein bars weren't really a thing. So if we'd have launched a protein bar then, it probably would have flopped because it was too early. So we had to sort of build our credibility and establish ourselves as a credible sports nutrition brand with other products like the weight loss product and creatines and pre-workouts before the market was ready for a protein bar. And that happened in 2015.
And how many years of development did it take to make the protein bar? Because I'm sure many people in this room can vouch, they taste phenomenal. They are the best protein bar I've ever had.
I mean, we went through 27 different varieties to get the first flavour, which was caramel. And we did it slightly differently. So, you know, when you start a brand, you're obviously aware of what other brands are doing, but we never wanted to copy them. So we thought, you know what, protein bars, excuse my language, taste like shit. The majority of the ones out there. And like, we tried them all. And like, we would open them and leave them in the meeting room. And like, they were still like a brick, like 2 weeks later. They hadn't changed consistency, which just didn't sit very well to us. So we needed to make sure that it had all the sort of protein tick boxes, you know, the whey protein. We needed to make sure that the sugar content was low. But, you know, the most important thing to us was actually for it to taste like a chocolate bar. So we sort of turned it on its head slightly, and we didn't go to a protein bar manufacturer. We went to a chocolate manufacturer and got them to innovate with protein. And I think that was really the sort of turning point in the protein bar market, and something that made it very sort of FMCG mass market. It was a protein bar that tasted like a chocolate bar, so it could sit in confec as opposed to sports nutrition.
I was going to say, you kind of are the definition of challenger, sitting alongside the likes of Innocent, who really innovated in the juice category. You came along in confectionery and have completely changed the chocolate world, and I guess what Candy Kittens are now doing in the sweet world. So yeah, you were like massively at the early adopters. How much of your success, said in inverted commas, do you think was down to kind of timing and luck?
I mean, I think you create your own luck, definitely. I mean, you know, it just didn't land on a plate for us. But I think timing is a huge thing. And like, you know, our friends, well, not necessarily friends, but people we knew created lactose-free milk in the 1960s, and it absolutely tanked. They had to throw most of it away because it just wasn't, we weren't ready for it. And like I said, you know, if we'd have been 10 years early with a protein bar or 10 years later, it wouldn't have been the right time. But the fact that protein was becoming more normalised, and like the sort of cereal boys and whatever were putting it on their packaging, it wasn't seen as this scary thing that was going to make you bulky. You know, it was becoming, you know, you should eat more protein. It was good for you. It helps build muscle mass, but it doesn't make you look like the Hulk. And so, like, the timing definitely was on our side. And I don't think there was a real sports nutrition brand that had that sort of character, that personality. So, yeah, it's really, really important.
I think as well, you were so good at speaking about like the successes and like the end result. Yes, you did sell out and etc. But actually, like, you're right, this is not an overnight success. I mean, they rarely are. This was an insane journey. So what would you say were the biggest challenges early on that you came up against? Did you ever kind of come home and go, I can't do this anymore, like, I'm done, I'm tapping out?
Yeah, I mean, we had lots of times when we came home and thought, oh my God, we are absolutely crazy. But I genuinely can't think of one moment when we thought, you know what, we've done, this isn't right. Because, you know, if you've got food brands here, I don't know whether anyone's got their own business, but you've got that gut feeling and it's instilled in you. And we always had that genuine belief that what we were doing was right. And, you know, we knew the journey was going to be challenging and there were going to be ups and downs, but we always knew deep down that this is what we should be doing, and we were hell-bent in making it work. So, you know, we had some really, really shit times. You know, we had the MHRA, which was like the medicines that started to talk about sort of ingredients and, you know, trading standards and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, I was sending wrong pallets to Holland and Barrett, and like we had loads of like day-to-day challenges. You know, we were going through a sale process in 2014 and the warehouse was getting broken into. So there was like like me and Al sleeping there watching Sons of Anarchy, because like, you know, I mean, probably wasn't the best thing to watch, to be honest with you, but you know, we were like, you know, so passionate about protecting what we had that we would do anything to make it work. And you know, I worked as a teacher before Grenade. Like back in the old days, I was like a shocking teacher. You know, I was like Cameron Diaz, but like not as hot. But you know, it just wasn't for me. I just had no passion. My life was ruled by a bell. But you know, I was still doing exam marking for the exam boards like 2 years into Grenade, because we were like, you know, we need to make sure that we've got enough money to keep this going. So, you know, we always had genuine belief, and every decision that we made, whether it be the right one or the wrong one, we always knew that we would learn from it and move on.
Yeah, it's such an amazing story. Your market positioning as well within kind of the confectionery space is quite unique. You've built out such a unique selling point for yourself. And when I think of Grenade, I think of your marketing and I think of your tank. You're known for your big tank. Talk to me about the process of a tank, because I'm assuming, or getting a tank, or how that even came about, because you know, the trade shows, I work in food and beverage, so the trade shows I go to, thousands of pounds are spent on these stands. And you guys at the start, you know, you probably wouldn't have had the thousands of pounds that these massive food brands had. So, but you came in and did something different, which I think is the key thing. Yeah, so really interested to hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. You know, we didn't have the big budgets of other brands. So we had a friend who's rather eccentric and has a collection of like 120 tanks down in Northampton. So as you do, you say, do you know what, we've got a trade show, and this was Body Power in 2010 at the NEC, and we literally had like no money. There was like Al and I on this stand. So we thought, do you know what, we'll drive a tank into the NEC, and this thing, you know, God knows what fueled it. I think it was like cooking oil and goodness knows what else, all the smoke. And we just had this 25 quid banner on the side. Al and I stood there like a couple of like sort of newbies, like with our Grenade branded t-shirts and a few products. Then, you know, that was really the starting point for Grenade, because, you know, one, we were different and we stood out. People absolutely loved it. You know, health and safety probably wouldn't let you do it now, but we had kids climbing all over it, you know, like athletes sitting on the barrels and whatever else. But, you know, we got an email about 3-4 weeks after that show, and it was from the diet and wellness bar at GNC in the US. And he said, oh, my team saw your product at the NEC and we have to stock you. And, you know, from us standing out and being really different was actually what got us noticed, because they were so used to seeing products that were in the same containers with called the same things. And, you know, there are no unique ingredients in sports nutrition. You know, we didn't have a magic pill. We just had a product that everyone else had, but we branded it slightly differently. And, you know, we did a lot of sort of guerrilla marketing, and like we didn't have a marketing budget. You know, I did all the marketing and stuff, and we were like, do you know what, sod it, let's just drive a tank down Oxford Street. And like we had no permissions or anything. You know, we parked underneath Marble Arch, you know, it was leaking, so we had to put some like card there. You know, all the police were coming over, but they absolutely loved the brand, so we were just giving them protein bars and like getting photos and stuff. And, you know, I think that's where, you know, getting people on your side and having that emotional connection and just having fun with what you do really does stand you in good stead, because people want to be part of it and they love it.
Yeah, and your product tasted amazing as well, so they would kind of be latched on by your marketing, taste it, and then go, gosh, I'm not going anywhere, this is great.
Yeah, but I think some of these people hadn't actually tried the product. You know, they just liked what we did. They liked the fact that we had fun. And, you know, I always say, like, you might disagree by the end of this, but, you know, we're not dicks. And I think that because we never did it to wind anyone up, we did it because we genuinely were excited about what we were doing. That really does get people, you know, on your side.
So after that buyer saw the product and wanted to stock it, and you said that was like the beginning for Grenade, how did that then kind of skyrocket or change the game in terms of like put you on the dial, put you on the map in terms of sales?
I mean, when I say it was like sort of a really turning point for Grenade, it could have actually finished us. So that made us sort of an international brand. So before that, we were selling in the UK and like Holland and Barrett's, you know, CLF, Tropicana, some of the sports nutrition distributors. But we hadn't really, you know, got any, you know, our feet anywhere else. So he wanted it in the US, and like Alan and I were, yeah, no problem. We were like, we hadn't even thought about it. You know, we didn't have a team over there. They had completely different ingredients, so we had to have a new formula. And GNC took everything on sale or return. So we funded a shitload of product to go on shelves in GNC in the US, and suddenly it wasn't selling, and we had to take some of it back. And like, you know, that really could have been the end of the brand because we put that much money into it without actually thinking about how it would work. And, you know, just silly things like we were maybe a bit naive because we thought, oh, we all speak the same language. But we had a team of athletes that were very lean, like sort of men's six-pack. So we were using the same athletes in the US magazines like Muscle and Fitness and whatever else. And everyone thought we were a gay brand. And like, you just think that because you speak the same language, it translates. And, you know, that, like I said, was naivety on our part. So then we had to really think about how, if we were going to do it in the US, one, we had to throw a shitload of money at it. And two, we had to make sure that we had the right tone of voice.
I think at the start, naivety is such a superpower because if you knew everything that would go wrong, it's so unlikely you do it. So actually, the fact that you didn't have the knowledge of it going and doing that, you know, it actually put you in good stead because then you had to react and go, right, okay, right, I need to think about this, how am I going to change the marketing out there? So, yeah. And then obviously seeing the brand out in the US, is that when the UK then started to pick up?
No, I mean, everyone thought we were a US brand, I think, because of like the sort of tone of voice. And, you know, we had like strap lines like I Declare War on Fat and Battle of the Bulge and all this sort of stuff. And obviously it looked quite like a US brand. And at that particular time, a lot of sports nutrition was coming from the US. So I think people were really surprised that we were a UK brand. But, you know, 70% of our sales were UK based.
Even then when you'd like passed. Yeah. And so how did you then scale in the UK? What was kind of the game changer for you and how did that change the dial?
I mean, I think like we've mentioned timing before, but I think, you know, timing was on our side. So protein, like I said, was becoming more normalised. And actually, you know, the chocolate category hadn't been, you know, hadn't really changed in however many years since, you know, Cadbury's came out with like a sharing bag or whatever. So there was no real innovation. And I think that, you know, we got listed in retailers in the sports nutrition aisle. So like Tesco's, I remember getting an email from them saying we can't ignore you anymore. And that put us in a really good position. So they obviously wanted to be part of it, but they didn't really know where they were going to put us. So I'll never forget somebody sending me a picture. They said, oh, look, Grenades really made it. And there we were next to a tub of KY jelly. And it was just a bit like, yeah, probably not the best place for us. So it was a huge sort of education process. So we had to educate those buyers where we should be in, you know, in the supermarkets, and we should be with a Confect. So we should be with all the other chocolate brands because people weren't seeing us as a sports nutrition brand. They were seeing us as a chocolate brand. So they weren't going down the sports nutrition aisle. So we knew that we needed to be in those, you know, those really prominent places to really gain traction. So there was a huge education piece.
Because I'm thinking about it, when I go down that aisle, I don't really pick up super like those kind of sports nutrition. You're right, from that aisle, I would go to chocolate aisle and grab a grenade bar instead if I wanted to kind of have something that was slightly healthier. So you almost like you really disrupted the category, but you also did create a new category because like look at all the brands that have now kind of followed in your footsteps.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's, you know, that's the best place to be, like category captain. So you're the ones that people recognise when it comes to protein bars. I mean, you might have noticed that Carb Killer's now actually been taken off the packaging because like a grenade bar is a protein bar. So it almost, you know, like Tupperware and sellotape, it becomes synonymous with what it actually
like
is.
Hoover is another one, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. So like, I think, you know, that's when you know that you've made it, when a protein bar is like a grenade bar, if that makes sense. But yeah, you're right. We created the category, but also, you know, retail, you know, space in UK retail is very, very expensive. So, you know, they're not just going to give it to you if your rate of sale is like 2 bars per week per store. So, you know, we really had to prove concept in those sports nutrition aisles before they would even consider us for sort of main Confect.
And how did you prove it?
We just did everything. So like we never gave up. I mean, we must have been an absolute nightmare to work with because like it was just like a dog with a bone. It was constant. So, you know, if somebody said to me, what was the one thing that you did that made Grenade where there isn't one thing, you know, we did everything. So we built really good relationships with the suppliers. I don't know whether you can get away with doing it now, but we took them on like tank driving days and all that sort of stuff and like really got them into the brand. You know, we supported them with point of sale. But I think that, you know, the real thing that gets you where you want to be in a supermarket is really good sales. So like, because we said what we were going to do and we exceeded the rate of sale, then they're going to put us in those prominent points. And we know that, you know, grenade bars spike basket spend. So in like petrol stations, we'd get, you know, great spots because people would come in and spend where normally they just go and buy their petrol.
I mean, yeah, of course, if you think about it, it does spike. Like, grenade bars aren't, they're not 60p like a dairy's.
Saying they're expensive.
They're delicious. I'm happy.
£3 they were. My dad said to me, I just saw one of your bars. It was like £3. He's like horrified.
You're right. They aren't cheap, but I still buy them because they fit with what I want. They completely satisfy me. So, yes, they are expensive, but I'd rather not pay that knowing I'm getting something that is slightly better for me than kind of the sugar spike. So, yeah, you definitely created a category and definitely do increase spend in baskets. What would you say was kind of one of the biggest things that... So you got your listing in Tesco and then you were sort of... It feels like everybody then knew about the grenade bar and how you kind of like then got it in the face of everyone. Other than the tank and pushing for the, making sure people were buying it and going in store and giving people point of sale, what other strategies did you put in place? 'Cause I think when you start a business, and I've never started my own business, but I know that I've worked in businesses from naught, very little turnover to now the likes of 20 million. And the naught to kind of like 1 to 4 million seems to be, you get traction. It seems to be like, it's obviously not easy. I'm definitely not saying that, but it seems to be easier than the 4 to 20. That part I get all the time on my podcast about people saying that is the pinch point. That is when you're like, right, this is just a nice business. It ticks over, but I want to make it there. How did you like bridge that gap?
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. I remember Alan and I sitting there when we started and we said, if we can sell 1,000 units a month, we'd be really happy. And then it was like, we need to sell 10,000 units a month. And then, the number just goes up and up. But again, timing was really key. So like when we launched Carb Killer bars in 2015, Instagram was just starting to take off. And, the one thing women love is chocolate. The one thing women talked about on Instagram was chocolate. So actually, we didn't need to spend that much money on marketing. And like, I'm tight, the marketing budget was like 0. So we didn't want to throw loads of money at influencers. And I know it worked for some brands, and, with Gymshark, for example, it's just an amazing model. But, we never felt comfortable doing that. So we got genuine people that genuinely loved the product, that talked about it on Instagram, and that really helped us. So I remember looking at Quest bars in the US, which were a protein bar that women absolutely went mental for. And I remember reading something, it said this woman comes out of a GNC store with 20 boxes of Quest bars, and somebody said, well, why are you buying those? She goes, well, I don't really know, but my friend buys them. And it was that sort of word of mouth that really gets you where you need to be. So we didn't really spend a lot on marketing. It was that real sort of guerrilla marketing, just getting people on board, talking about your product and being your biggest advocates.
Word of mouth is incredibly powerful. I mean, even from me walking into Whole Foods for the first time and seeing all these brands, and from the girls that I used to work with saying about these brands, I would then go and pick it up, not knowing about the brand. Oh yeah, that looks delicious, I'll have it. And you're so right. That kind of like, when someone's talking about a brand and more people talk about a brand, is such a snowball effect.
Yeah, definitely. But it can also have the negative effect. And, I always say, and I don't say this, but social media gives twats a voice. So like before you had to write a letter of complaint, whereas now somebody can say whatever they want about your brand and it's seen by hundreds of people, millions of people, and then suddenly you've got to defend that. So, I remember reading an article, it was a double-page spread in the Mirror about this woman that had taken grenade capsules and like was in a horrendous state with like kidney issues and all sorts, and we were like, oh my god, this is awful. And then we actually read into it, and the timing was before grenade products were actually available, and like you take everything personally. So we found her on Facebook, and there she was there drinking pints, but suddenly you're in the Daily Mail in a double page spread about how your product is having a negative effect on people, and that's really heartbreaking when you take it really personally.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it's your baby. You've created it. In 2017, Lion Capital acquired a majority stake in Grenade and valued the business at 72 million. How did that feel? What was that like? When I was doing my research the other day, I read that your husband came home and had a curry and a cream egg.
I think he had 4, but yeah, the sense is there.
I can't imagine what I'd do if I found out my business had been valued at 72 and I sold 50% of it off. So basically, am I right in saying that 35 mil kind of just landed in your bank account. To put it very naively.
We had, we've got taxes to pay. And
Yeah, of course,
sort of stuff,
of course.
We actually had our
things.
first round of investment in 2014, which was Grove Point Capital. So they're like pseudo private equity, super nice guys, super smart guys from ex-Investec bankers, and they saw the value in Grenade. And actually, when they bought a majority. So
and
that
did they approach you?
Yeah, I mean, we shouldn't really. If I could, I don't know whether we'll come on to this question, but, if there was one thing I could change, it would probably be selling a majority. And it was only just a majority so early on, because that almost sort of directed our path through investment for the next however many years. But they invested in Alan Jules and 4Cat, so we had no staff then. The business was, they valued at 18 million. So I think we were a bit flattered. So we didn't even have Carb Killer then. So I think we probably wanted to de-risk a little bit. So we had the majority of the business on one product, and caffeine was looking a bit dodgy in the EU then. So we thought, we're at risk of this product getting banned, and then obviously we would have no business. So we took that. The business was cash generative, so none of it went into the business. But, that was really the point where Al and I got the dream house and whatever else. But then it almost made us work harder, because we now had investors that we wanted to prove and look after and make them think that, just solidify that they made a good investment. So we worked even harder from that. So I think it was a curry and 4 cream eggs, and then press a reset button and go again.
Oh my gosh, that is pretty mental. And I think when you're right in saying that I want to sell 1,000 bars and then I want to sell 10,000 bars. Actually, when you've got the house and you've got the cars and you've got all the diamonds or whatever it is that you want next, you then think, oh, well, actually, what's next? How do I keep going? So that satisfaction level, is that something that you felt that you fulfilled?
Yeah, I mean, I think it gives you that comfort, because it gives you. It makes you see. I'm trying to explain it without sounding like an arse, but
money gives you options.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it almost made it worthwhile for us doing what we'd done and the sacrifices that we made. And it sounds woe is me, but we never took a day off. We didn't take a salary. We'd never had kids because the business was our baby. And as I was talking about to one of your colleagues earlier, we'd have been shit parents. We'd have argued about who had them, and we'd have left them at supermarkets and all sorts. It would have been horrendous. But it almost said, what, we've worked really hard.
I think that's normal parenting. I'm pretty sure I've lost my mum down plenty of supermarket aisles.
I think it made us think, that's just, that's a well done for what we've done. Now let's really start, because when you've got investors, like I said, it does drive you. And then the second round of investment was 2017, and that was Lion Capital, and that was 72 mil valuation. I think from memory we were doing maybe a 30 million turnover at that point. I can't really remember off the top of my head, but that was when it became a bit more serious, because they wanted to put debt in the business, and once you sell a majority, your direction is whatever direction they want to go in. So I always say the biggest thing with investment is you don't think about getting into bed with them. You've got to think about a divorce, because you are going to get divorced, and getting into bed with them is easy. It's how you're going to get out, and making sure that you're completely aligned on that. So we knew that after sort of 3 years that they would want to sell, and we had to go along with those timescales really.
Yeah, I guess you don't necessarily think about that. You're so excited about, yes, investor, and then you don't necessarily think, oh, actually, we're going to have to exit at some point. And that's probably a part for loads of entrepreneurs that it gets quite sticky. Yeah, definitely. And I work with a lot of food brands at the moment, non-exec chairperson roles. And, the one thing that really sort of frustrates me is I want to get investment. Well, what do you want it for? And it's just, we want to get investment. It's just you need to make this business work yourself, because, you've got to answer to them. And the one thing entrepreneurs hate doing is answering to people. They want to do what they want to do, where they want to do it, and they don't want to be told what to do by somebody with a calculator and a suit. And, it's almost like you've got to make your business work without investments. It's got to be cash generative. A business is making something or providing something, selling it and making money and putting it back in. It's not borrowing and borrowing and borrowing to sort of plug the gap. That's only going to get you into one place, and that's in a lot of debt. Sorry, I ranted then. You can feel how passionately I feel about that. No, it's great. Customer feedback is so key, and something that my dad always says is the customer's always right. And I've learned that. And I think within reason, yes, but I do think your customer is king, as much as money is king and obviously cash flow. But at the end of the day, if your customer's not buying it, you don't have a business. So how did you incorporate customer feedback, and did you get any kind of early feedback that you've always remembered about the product?
just going back to your comment there about cash is king. We actually had someone in an interview saying that for an accountancy job, and yeah, obviously they didn't get the job. But yeah, I mean, we took customer feedback really, really personally. And like I said, social media gives twats a voice, doesn't it? They could suddenly have access to you. But, we had a great team at Grenade. And like the guy that used to do the customer service in the early days, Rob, he's still there now, he's head of production, I think. If anybody used to say anything negative about the product, he used to take it really personally. So I remember somebody saying once, they only had 98 capsules in a container. So he literally unpackaged all these like 4 capsules and he sent them like 2 back. And it was just like he was mortified that something wasn't right. So, we were never arrogant enough thinking that we had all the answers. And, we wanted our customers to love the brand. So if they ever weren't happy, then we did work really, really hard to keep them on side.
And competitive landscape is something I wanted to touch on, because you guys brought your bar to market in 2015. The bar came out. Did you then see quite quickly a lot of other protein bar products come out? Was it something that, people are clocking onto this, the trend? And how did you then continue to stay competitive? I think you're so right in that you had the category kind of like king and you had the concept of it and you were the one that brought it to market. But how did you kind of keep becoming innovative within like everything that was going on, obviously the competitors?
Yeah, I mean, we never sat back on our laurels. So I think, it's a really dangerous thing to do, to think, I'm, the category captain, I'm selling the most bars on Amazon. That's just like arrogant, and like brands are going to catch you up. So we were always really interested in what other brands were doing, but we were always stayed true to our roots and followed our gut and did what was right for the Grenade. But, I remember all throughout like the investment processes, they were always banging on about, the investors, where's the IP for the bars? Well, it's just like, you can't buy an IP for a bar, because like all they need to do is change the sugar by like 2 grams or put another gram of fibre in it, and it's a different product. So, we knew competitors were going to the same manufacturers as us. I mean, obviously we were doing huge volume, so that they weren't, they were making bars for other people, but they weren't doing exactly the same formula. But that's when you really have to start working hard. So that's when we really upped the marketing. We got higher profile athletes on board, and we kept on top of it, because the one thing that we would never want to do is to sit back, think, what, we've got this nailed, and then somebody come over and, that would have just broken our hearts.
Yeah, you can't really take your foot off the pedal.
No. That's a much more eloquent way of saying what I just said in about 20 minutes.
You mentioned that Rob is your head of product development and he's still there. So your employee turnover must be really low, which is obviously fantastic. So it kind of breeds a really good culture that you've built. What would you say that your leadership style has been like at Grenade? And talk to me a bit about that.
I mean, my car parking space was Angry Birds, so that might give you some sort of idea. But I was always first in and last out, because I felt it was so important that staff saw founders there in the business. If you're one of these that's sort of rocking up at 10 and then buggering off at 12, that never sat well with me, whether that was the right or the wrong thing to do. But as an entrepreneurial business, we had to get people in that were better than us. And I think those first sort of employees that we got, they were really, really difficult, because suddenly you're bringing on people, like we had to bring on an FD when we did the investment in 2014. And we were like, for fuck's sake, we've got to pay this guy with a calculator 120 grand. But actually he was the best hire, because he freed Al and I up to do the things that we were really good at doing. And like, I remember through one of the investment processes, there were going to be a lot of bleeps here. I was like, forecasting's bollocks, just put your finger in the air. But he would do all of that, and he would keep the investors happy. So that actually made our jobs much easier. And, I think one of the biggest sort of step changes in a business is suddenly when you start bringing on people that are better than you, and you give them the freedom and the support and the encouragement to actually do their job. But it is really difficult, because you're so used to doing everything yourself. So, to sort of give power or control to somebody else is tough, but it's the right thing to do for the business to grow, because naturally businesses should outgrow their founders, because they should be bigger than you, and then you can go and do like all the entrepreneurial stuff and the founder stories, and then you've got the brilliant people in the business that are running it for you. Because we'd never grown Grenade had a 611 million valuation a few weeks ago. It's turning over 100 million now, and I think it sold something ridiculous like 60,000 Oreo bars last year, and the numbers are just ridiculous. I'm an ex-school teacher, I was an ex-gym manager. We never had the skills to take the business to those sort of that size.
I just can't believe what you just said. 600 million, like
611 valuation, yeah.
That is,
to be precise.
Yeah, gosh, and be precise.
But again, like
Absolutely.
this was something that we set up from a bedroom, and it is just phenomenal. But it was never ever about the money. It was always about the business, and I think that that real passion is still there in the business now, even though it's owned by a huge US company. We still got that Grenade DNA in there.
I think if you set out a business to become rich or make money, it probably won't, because if that's your end goal, you're not thinking about all the steps that need to be taken. You're not thinking about the journey. You're just going, I want to be rich, which probably doesn't end terribly well. But just going back to your point about leadership style, I think the founder of the business I work for, James, he always says you never want to be the smartest person in the room. And it's so true, because actually you always need to hire better, because if you're hiring that people need that need a lot of support and you need to train them up, you're not wasting your time, of course, but as in you're not putting your time to good use, and it's not really going to benefit the company or you. So I really agree.
Yeah, definitely. But I also think that, there was nothing in that business that I wasn't willing to do. I learned to drive a forklift badly. We put pallets away, empty the bins, all that sort of stuff, because you shouldn't expect anyone to do anything in your business unless you're prepared to do it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of kind of the future and future trends, where do you see sports nutrition going, in particular protein bars? Because there is so much innovation out there now, and FMCG, the kind of industry that I'm really lucky to work in, there is so many people that now are desperate to work in FMCG, and similar to you, it was never what I set out to do. It was fashion. I loved buying clothes, and that was totally where my head was at. And I think, I'm just interested to think where you think the next step is going to go, is because I think so many brands are now doing what you did 10 years ago. They're still being in that disruptor phase. And although that is really important to disrupt a category, what is actually going to be next? Like, how are people going to notice the next big thing?
I mean, it's so difficult. I mean, there are obviously innovations in like sources of protein, for example, like insect protein and whatever. And I think, vegan chocolate was big for a while. Whether the plant-based market is as big as everyone thought it was going to be, there are new formats. But, there are no magic ingredients out there. And unless something's discovered, I think, I don't know, are we talking different sizes, different flavours? It's just difficult to sort of predict what that next innovation is going to be, because I just don't think we're there yet. I think gut health is going to be really big. I think, ultra processed is a big sort of talking point at the moment. So, whether we're looking at more gut health and how that affects everything else. And, but when it comes to chocolate, protein is, the sources of protein. I can't see there being any sort of new developments in that area at the moment.
Well, it's been interesting as well, because I think protein hasn't been a fad. Like, there's been a lot of fake meat that has come and gone. You've seen a lot of a rise of fake burgers and fake chicken, and now it's totally tailing off with, you can't go on a tube without seeing Tim Spector's book, Ultra Processed Food, anywhere. So people are kind of wising up to it, but protein's always been something that it's not been a fad. It's been like, get more protein in your diet, and it's not something that's going.
Yeah, definitely. And, without sounding like arrogant, working for a couple of food brands, I said Grenade's a real problem, because, I've had so many comments like, we want to be 100 mil or whatever, but protein's protein. You can't say that protein is the same as plant-based, or it's not the same as drink. So it's really hard to replicate something in a different sector, because you just don't know what that space is going to be.
Other than what you said about giving up a majority stake so early on, what would you say was another big mistake that you made at Grenade?
I mean, I'm a big believer in a definition of stupid is, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. So I think, we might have made mistakes on a day in, day out basis, but because we were always so true to the brand and we were always clear with what we wanted to achieve, we always wanted to be a global brand. There were challenges with ingredients, like I said. We probably didn't hire staff quick enough. We sold the majority, but there's not one thing that we did that I would say, do you know what, that was a mistake, because we learnt from everything and we did it differently moving forward. So going into the US, like I said, was a bit of a sort of a challenging time. I hate the way people use challenging, where it's fucking horrendous, and I could have finished the business. It was a challenge, but it was difficult, but we made it work, and actually we learned a lot from that. And I'd much rather have done it then with one product at that particular point than with Carb Killer, for example, where we'd invested a lot more and we had no brand awareness over there. So yeah, there's nothing, that I'd say that was a massive mistake, just challenging times and learning opportunities.
So we've got 15 minutes right at the end to ask any questions, so get them ready while I ask my last question. Well, I've got two last questions actually, because I've just decided another one. Advice for entrepreneurs, anybody sitting in this room, anybody that will listen to this online, because this is a live recording as well of Getting to Grow.
With lots of bleeps, I think.
It's fine. We like a few beeps. Spotify just screen it, so I'll have to be explicit. Biggest piece of advice for entrepreneurs or someone that's sat at home right now or listening or in here thinking, I really want to do this, but they just haven't quite done it yet. What would you say to them?
Oh, a couple of bits of advice. I mean, life is short, and, I can't think of anything worse personally than being in a job where you know exactly what you're going to be doing at 9:10, 9:30, and your life is ruled by a bell, for example. So, I'd rather be a has-been than a never was. So if financially you can do it and you've got a good idea and you can make it happen, then, what's the worst can happen? But I also feel like follow your gut. And especially when you're looking at investment and all those sorts of things, don't let anyone take you down a path that you're not comfortable with. If you stay true to your brand and you follow your gut feeling, if it works out, brilliant. If it doesn't work out, at least there'll be no, oh God, I shouldn't have done that, because you know that you've done what you thought you should do.
Yeah.
That's not a very good bit of advice, but I think, follow your gut, and, life is short. Give it a go. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then at least you know.
Yeah, I think I would totally sit in that camp. I'd rather do it and fail than never do it, because I think then I'd have a massive itch to scratch about wanting to do it. And I'm a massive foodie, so I absolutely love my grub. What's your last meal on earth, starter, main, dessert?
Fish and chips.
Fish and chips.
Yeah, definitely. Fish and chips for starters, fish and chips for main, and then probably apple crumble for dessert.
Okay, that was way quicker than I just...
Yeah, just fish and chips.
I love it. Okay, I've got time for one more then. What's next for you then, Juliet?
I've got an itch that I need to scratch. So, there is something in the pipeline. But again, I don't want a second album. So, I don't want to do something just because I feel I should do something. So I'll do thorough investigations first, find out if the market is what I think it is, and then see. Because I cause trouble. If I'm not busy, then I cause a lot of trouble. So I have to keep myself very, very busy.
Oh, it's super inspiring. Thank you so much for coming on Getting to Grow live at the Ned. Thank you all for being here. So the lovely Victor is going to be passing around the microphone for some questions. So yeah, any questions for Juliet, please raise your hand. Gentleman over here.
Cheers, thank you. A quick question. So you talk about the business being worth 611 million now. At what point did you realise that maybe the ship should be steered by someone else, and you're like, we've got it to a value of 70 million, but at this point we need to sell it to someone bigger who's got kind of the corporate structure to kind of take it where it could go?
I mean, we never really felt that with, we had a good team. So we had a general manager who was ex Cadbury's. So we brought good people in. We had a commercial director that was ex Holland & Barrett. So it's not like we didn't want to bring in good people, but I think there comes a point where it's the right time to sell a business. So for example, Grenade was the only privately owned protein bar company left out there, really. And what we didn't want to do is miss the boat. So if, for example, protein became less sort of favourable and value started to drop, then that might have caused us a bit of an issue. And when Al and I set up Grenade, we said we wanted to sell to Cadbury's, and we sold to Mondelez. So selling to their owners we just felt, and I know it sounds really crap, but we did feel it was the right home for the business, and the valuation was okay. So we sort of took it. I think you can be greedy, you can hang on too long. So, everything just seemed to align. So we had a fail process in 2019, just before COVID. For whatever reason, that didn't work out. So I think it just felt right. So again, that gut feeling.
Any other questions? I can't see the lights too bright.
I think your initial marketing strategy was absolutely fascinating. You was a great disruptor in the market. You had no marketing budget essentially. Driving a tank down Oxford Circus next to the police and taking selfies, stuff like that. Did you find as the brand grew, you stuck to similar sort of strategies in terms of disruption, or did you start putting a lot more budget into it? Was there any other events like that? I don't know, driving up to the Houses of Parliament or something like that with a tank?
Yeah, I mean, that would be tempting, wouldn't it? Maybe I'll do it on July the 5th.
Yeah.
I don't know, July the 4th. Yeah, that could be interesting. I'll make a note of that when I get back to the office and pass it on. Thanks for that. I think we became a bit more refined. So like I said, we had no marketing budget, and like when we had the marketing team, they used to come and ask for sort of money, and we used to sign it off. But with investors, they say, oh yeah, you should be spending 10-20% of your profit on marketing. So we always made sure we upped the budget, and of course with sort of international shows, we had to do a lot more overseas as well. So we never wanted to lose that Grenade, sort of the grit and the real DNA and that sense of having fun. We just probably did it in a bit more of a refined way. So if we drove the tank down, and I think we did it with James Haskell, then we actually got permission to do it that time. And then we did a big sort of things at like shopping centres and stuff, but it was still very much like sort of guerrilla and, activations. It wasn't just like a sort of a background with grenade bars giving away. That was never what we were about really, but we did probably have to be a bit more sophisticated with our marketing. So we grew up a little bit, unfortunately.
Thanks.
I know you kind of alluded to something in the pipeline from off the back of Zoe's question, but my question was going to be, if you didn't do any more, like you're not going into all that market research, and it was a pure passion project, what would the next thing be apart from starting a fish and chip van?
Okay, yeah, I'm absolutely shocking at cooking. So like fish and chip van would just be nowhere. I'm a cheese and cracker girl. That's the sort of level of my cooking. If it wasn't so much of a tie, I would start an animal sanctuary. God, that's so crap, isn't it? It's like, I want to feed the world and start an animal sanctuary. But no, I think, what money does is it gives you options, and you can really do things that you're passionate about, and, that gives you a bit of a purpose, because, when you're building a business, that's your purpose. When you're not in that business, you need that purpose. So, yeah, something to do with animals, definitely. So if anyone has a nice animal brand out there, then just hit me up.
Hi, you said when you started the brand, it started in the UK, but that was because of ease and where you were based. If you were starting something now, potentially, would you just automatically go to the UK first, or would you actually look geographically elsewhere?
I would probably do something that was a bit more D2C as opposed to by distributors, and then I think that gives you that sort of global stretch from day one. But when it comes to sort of working with FMCG, the Tesco's and the Sainsbury's will only list you if you have good UK coverage. And actually what we found is that that helped us to export easier, because they saw what we'd done in the UK and it almost proved concept, so it was easier to go overseas. So it's very difficult to get listings overseas if you haven't got that sort of proof of concept.
Thank you. I had a question about when you first started, and was curious. I think these days it's in some ways easier than ever to start a business and start selling, from social media. But I was curious for you whether you think it's more important just to start with what you have when you're not ready and kind of fail fast, or whether actually there really is value in taking it a bit slower and really putting through a clear plan for your roadmap, and which option maybe you took with that.
We were literally speaking about this before we started.
I mean, my sort of thoughts on roadmaps is the same as forecasting. I think that you can wait until you've got everything written down, but that all goes out the window on day one anyway. So for us, we launched when we were not, well, I was going to say 100%, but 99% happy with the product. I think that's the key. And then you can have the best roadmap in the world, but it all goes out the window and you end up winging it anyway. So I think if you're happy with your product, that's when you should start, because if you wait, then someone else might get there first. So, but maybe that's my personality. I'm like, give it a go and see what happens.
Thank you.
If you do that and it completely fails, please don't say that I've given you the business advice. Just fuck it, just go for it.
Thank you. Really, really interesting to hear your story. So you mentioned your production manager, Rob, I think you said, as being, he's been with the business for a really long time. I imagine throughout the rest of the business's history, there have been quite a few faces through the door. What has been your approach to staff retention?
Yeah, I mean, like in the early days, it was easy because, like, you know, people loved when we employed Rob, I think he was doing some bodybuilding show, so he was carb depleted in these little pants, and like we went to see him on stage, and he's still there now. I mean, he was a shit bodybuilder, but he's great at production. And, you know, the graphic designer, the head of creative, I remember giving him his £5 bus fare. He came to us straight out of university and like didn't have any money, so we had to pay for him to get there. And, you know, we always... In the early days, it's easy because staff love the brand, and, you know, they've got access to the founders, and it's like a family. Like, we used to take them all to the cinema and whatever. And, you know, you recruit on personality and culture. I think as the business gets bigger, then it's slightly harder because you have to recruit people that are good at their job, if that makes sense. They've got that track record. But, you know, the one thing that we always wanted to do is to create that Grenade culture. So we always gave people the story of Grenade, and we don't want people to not know about the beginnings. You know, when we had a shitty warehouse and like one toilet between like 30 people, you know, they need to know the background of the business. But I think if people love your brand, then they will stay. And we always looked after staff. I think it's a different story now with Mondelez, because obviously they get all the benefits of being in a big corporate, but that entrepreneurial business. So they all absolutely love it. You know, they get like the sort of wellness cafes and all this sort of stuff, but they still get to work for a cool brand. But, you know, we paid people well, but we didn't pay the best in the industry. So we had something called a unit share scheme. So basically, when the business was sold, staff could earn up to 100% of their salary as a lump sum bonus. So that was awarded in 25% increments. So that actually kept good staff in the business because they knew it would be sold. And like for somebody that was on 40, 50 grand, you know, well, for anyone, you know, that lump sum is a big chunk of money just from doing your job well. And that was completely discretionary. So, you know, a lot of staff stayed because they knew that they would get that.
I think we've got time for one more.
Hi, Juliet. This is not really a question, it's just more of a statement saying it's been lovely listening to you, and you're clearly very grounded, and it's been very humbling listening to your story. And I loved your sentiment when you said never be too arrogant to think that you're not always right, or to know that you're not always right. I think that's a lovely thing you said there.
No, thank you. And, you
That
know,
was just
that's
you.
really, really
Yeah.
important to me. And, you know, I work with food brands now, and we, not for any reason, but like quite a lot of ex-Grenade staff that are moving around like with these food brands. And, you know, I think the biggest compliment that somebody could pay you is they said, oh, Jules hasn't changed since the first day I met her. Because, yeah, I mean, I would do it all over again. And I think if you're a dick, then you get treated like a dick. So I would never, ever, ever want anyone to say, do you know what, you're a right stuck-up cow. I would hate that.
I think people see through you, don't they?
Yeah, definitely. I'm not very good at, you know, I can't lie. So it would be really, really obvious. We're going to have to cut so much of this out, aren't we?
Final question. Any particular challenges as a woman in a challenger business that you want to talk about?
I mean, I'm probably the worst person to talk about women in business because I don't give a shit if you're green.
I was going to say, I don't think we're not scared of you. So
I don't think it matters whether you're green, blue, black, male or female. If you work hard and you're good at your job, you deserve to do well. And, you know, I get asked to be on like women business panels, and I'm like, can I not just be on a business panel? And like, I just don't want to be singled out because I'm a woman. So I think I'm probably a shit example because I haven't got kids, so I was never, you know, everything was Grenade, so I never was pulled in one direction, you know, to go and pick up the kids from school and all that sort of stuff. But I just genuinely feel if you work hard, it doesn't matter what you are, what you look like, you'll get on well. So I'm really sorry that I can't say that, but I just know that, you know, you can't dip in and out of a business, so I gave it everything. And I think if you are pulled in different directions with childcare and stuff, then it's really, really tough. But other than the fact that when we met a Kuwait distributor and he bought Al a gift and not me, and then realised that I was a co-founder, so he ran upstairs to his hotel and got me a present, I've never actually felt, you know, and when I went to Kuwait and I couldn't go to the gym, that annoyed me. But other than that, it's been fine.
Oh, well, thank you so much again for coming on, and thank you to the Ned for hosting. So Juliet unfortunately has got to run off because she's been amazing and come down from the Midlands for this evening's speech. But I'm sure if anybody wanted to get in touch, I'm happy to. We can have a conversation about that. But yeah, thank you again and have a lovely evening all.